You are surrounded by fools, and it is exhausting. You believe your intelligence is your greatest strength. In reality, it is often your greatest vulnerability. The modern world teaches you to educate the ignorant, rely on logic, and search for common ground. But Schopenhauer understood a far harsher truth. Logic has no defense against stupidity. Trying to explain your thinking to a fool is not an act of wisdom. It is intellectual self-destruction. There is a hidden, almost ruthless framework for dealing with those who choose ignorance. A method the most dangerous minds throughout history used to neutralize fools without ever rewarding them with the truth. Once you understand how this mechanism works, you will never again allow a lesser mind to drain your energy. You already know the feeling. You are sitting in a room, perhaps in a boardroom, around the family dinner table, or inside an online battlefield, listening to someone speak with complete and unwavering confidence about something they fundamentally do not understand. You can feel the tension rising inside your chest. Instantly, your mind identifies every weakness in their reasoning. You gather your evidence. You prepare your argument. You present it as clearly and logically as possible, expecting reason to finally break through. Instead, they simply look at you. They pause, and then they cling even more tightly to the same absurd position they started with. You walk away from the conversation exhausted, your energy drained, wondering if you are the one losing your mind. Why does this happen? Why do you lose when you are objectively right? Because you are suffering from the intelligence trap. You are projecting your own operating system onto a machine that cannot run it. Intelligent people operate under a fatal delusion, the belief that the rest of the world values the truth. You assume that if you just present the right evidence, the other person will analyze it, adjust their worldview, and agree. Schopenhauer despised this naive optimism. In his blistering text, The Art of Being Right, he observed a dark, unyielding law of human nature. People do not argue to find the truth. They argue to establish dominance. Psychology calls it the Dunning-Kruger effect, the cognitive bias where people with low ability possess a hallucinatory level of confidence. But understanding the graph is not enough. You must understand the gravity of it. Ignorance is not a passive state. It is an active, heavily armored defense mechanism. When you introduce logic to a fool, they do not see an opportunity to learn. They see a threat to their ego, and the human ego will burn down the entire world before it admits it is wrong. Daniel Kahneman, in Thinking Fast and Slow, divided the mind into System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, emotional, and instinctual. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. Stupid people are prisoners of System 1. They live there. They feel an emotion, attach a fast opinion to it, and call it a fact. You, the intelligent person, are trying to use System 2 on them. You are offering nuance. You are offering data. It is a translation error. You are speaking mathematics to a barking dog. Worse, you are doing all the work. You are spending immense caloric energy crafting a perfectly reasoned argument while they are spending zero energy simply refusing to accept it. They drain you not by outsmarting you, but by outlasting you. They pull you down into the mud of their own mental limitations. Schopenhauer recognized this reality more than 2 centuries ago. He understood that truth holds no value in an argument with a fool. So what should you do if logic cannot win and reason becomes a trap? How do you come out ahead? You do not fight them. You turn their own momentum against them. Schopenhauer understood that the intellect is merely a servant of the will that blind, irrational, emotional force inside every human being almost always takes control. The moment you argue with a fool, you give them exactly what they are seeking: resistance. And resistance makes them feel significant. Your frustration convinces them that they matter. Every time you challenge their position, you give legitimacy to their illusion. You are silently telling them, your opinion deserves my time and my emotion. If you want to defeat a fool, you must deny them that resistance. How? By using one of Schopenhauer's most ruthless strategies. Do not argue against them. Agree with them, but agree so completely, so aggressively, that their own argument collapses into absurdity. In philosophy, this resembles reductio ad absurdum. In dark psychology, it is simply giving someone enough rope to destroy themselves. Imagine a colleague who insists that all modern art is a fraud and that absolutely anyone could create a masterpiece. The instinct of the intelligent person is to argue about technique, art history, and subjective expression. Stop. Instead, lean in. Nod slowly. You are entirely right, you say. In fact, since it is so easy, we should quit our jobs today. We will buy some paint this afternoon. You can do the canvases. I will find the gallery. We will be millionaires by Friday. Why are we even sitting in this office? Watch their eyes. You have not attacked them. You have completely validated their premise, but you have accelerated it to its logical, catastrophic conclusion. The fool operates on the surface. They never think 3 steps ahead. When you force them to look at the destination of their own thought process, their brain short circuits. They have to backpedal. They have to inject nuance. They have to suddenly start arguing against themselves to save face. You did not defeat them with your logic. You defeated them with their own stupidity. Schopenhauer employed this mercilessly against his academic rivals. He did not engage in polite discourse with people he considered charlatans. He did not treat their ideas as equals. He magnified their flaws until the flaws became comical. When you do this, you protect your own energy. You step out of the ring. You become the observer watching a child trip over their own shoelaces. But this requires a terrifying shift in your own psychology. You must kill the part of your ego that desperately wants to be recognized as right. Intelligent people are addicted to being correct. You want the satisfaction of the other person conceding. You want the moral victory. Schopenhauer would tell you that seeking validation from a fool is the ultimate form of stupidity. Why do you care if a lesser mind acknowledges your brilliance? Why do you need a blind man to compliment your painting? When you drop the need to be right in their eyes, you become immune to their provocations. You stop giving them the remote control to your nervous system. Let them hold their incorrect beliefs. Let them walk into the world with their flawed maps. It is not your duty to save them. It is your duty to protect yourself from them. Which brings us to a darker, more necessary realization. Stupidity is not a passive trait. It is highly contagious. If you spend enough time trying to navigate the chaotic, irrational terrain of a foolish person's mind, you will slowly begin to damage your own. Cognitive load theory explains that the mind has only a limited amount of mental bandwidth. When you deal with someone who is deeply irrational, your brain is forced to work far beyond what it should. You are constantly trying to anticipate reactions that cannot be predicted. You are suppressing your own frustration. You are walking on eggshells with every conversation. Over time, this continuous mental strain weakens your ability to think clearly. You become more irritable. Your decisions become poorer. Your creativity begins to fade. You are allowing a parasite to consume your intellectual resources. Schopenhauer was famously solitary. Many people labeled him a misanthrope. They claimed he hated humanity. But if you read The Wisdom of Life, a different picture emerges. He did not hate humanity. He was simply uncompromising when it came to protecting his mental environment. He wrote, "To marry is to have your rights and double your duties." He applied that same unforgiving logic to human relationships. To engage with a fool is to have your intelligence and double your exhaustion. He illustrated this through the famous porcupine dilemma. On a freezing winter night, porcupines gathered together for warmth, but their sharp quills wound one another, forcing them apart again. They become trapped between two painful choices, freezing in isolation or bleeding through closeness. The intelligent person must master this distance. You cannot avoid stupid people entirely. They are your managers, your clients, your neighbors, and sometimes your blood. But you must establish a psychological quarantine. When you are forced to interact with them, you do not bring your authentic self to the table. You bring an avatar. The avatar is polite. The avatar smiles. The avatar speaks in short, agreeable sentences. Interesting perspective. I see what you mean. That's one way to look at it. The avatar gives them nothing to attack. The avatar is a mirror reflecting their own noise back at them, while your actual mind remains protected behind a fortress of detachment. This is the Machiavellian application of Schopenhauer's philosophy. You are physically present, but intellectually absent. They will think they are having a conversation with you. They will think they are winning. Let them. The illusion of victory is the cheapest toy you can give a fool to keep them quiet. Do you feel the guilt rising, the societal conditioning telling you that this is manipulative, that it is arrogant to view others this way? Kill that guilt. That guilt is exactly why you have been suffering. You have been treating intellectual predators like fragile victims. A foolish person who aggressively insists on their own ignorance is not innocent. They are a hazard. David Robson in The Intelligence Trap details how institutional stupidity, smart people following the confident, incorrect herd, has caused plane crashes, economic collapses, and medical disasters. Stupidity is dangerous. You do not owe it your vulnerability. You do not owe it your energy. You must view their ignorance as a force of nature. You do not argue with a hurricane. You do not try to educate a flood. You board up the windows. You seek high ground, and you let the storm exhaust itself. But what happens when the fool has power over you? What happens when the irrational mind signs your paycheck or holds the key to your promotion? How do you survive when the system itself rewards the loudest idiot in the room? This requires an entirely different set of weapons. The most dangerous creature is not the predator. It is the frightened beast wearing a crown. When a person with limited intellect gains power, the entire structure of their psychology rests upon a deep and hidden foundation of insecurity. On an instinctive level, they recognize that the minds around them are stronger than their own. They do not experience that realization as a reason to grow. They experience it as a threat to their survival. The moment you enter their territory and openly display your intelligence, you are not demonstrating your value. You are forcing them to confront their own inadequacy. And a fool who holds power will always destroy the mirror rather than face the reflection. Schopenhauer described this dynamic with ruthless clarity. He wrote that displaying exceptional intelligence or remarkable ability in the presence of mediocrity is an unforgivable offense. The mediocre mind experiences something close to psychological pain when confronted with genuine greatness. It awakens a quiet, persistent resentment. They rarely attack your intelligence directly. Instead, they attack your character. They label you as difficult, uncooperative, or someone who cannot work with others. They use the machinery of bureaucracy to slowly wear you down. You cannot defeat a king by arguing with him inside his own castle. You must outplay him. Look at the blood-soaked history of the Three Kingdoms. Sima Yi was arguably the most brilliant military strategist of his era, but he found himself serving beneath Cao Shuang, a regent of immense power and staggering foolishness. Cao Shuang was arrogant, impulsive, and deeply envious of Sima Yi's intellect. If Sima Yi challenged him, he and his entire bloodline would be executed. If he argued, he would be crushed. So Sima Yi executed the most humiliating and effective strategy in the history of warfare, the submission gambit. He faked senility. When Cao Shuang's spies came to check on him, Sima Yi acted the part of a dying, pathetic old man. He purposely dropped his soup, letting it spill down his robes. He pretended he could not hear. He confused names. He looked entirely broken. The spy reported back to Cao Shuang. The foolish regent laughed. He felt superior. He felt safe. He stopped viewing Sima Yi as a threat and lowered his defenses. The fool's ego was satisfied. Months later, while Cao Shuang was out on a hunting trip, Sima Yi dropped the act. He rose from his sickbed, orchestrated a lightning-fast military coup, and seized the entire empire. Cao Shuang lost his head because he believed the illusion. Sima Yi understood something you must learn today. Your intelligence is not a badge you wear on your chest. It is a concealed weapon. You do not draw a concealed weapon to show off. You keep it hidden until the exact moment it is required. When dealing with a powerful fool, feed them the exact emotion they are starving for: superiority. Ask them for advice on trivial matters. Let them correct you on minor, irrelevant details. Thank them for their insight. You are not submitting, you are anesthetizing them. You are injecting their ego with a narcotic so heavy they fall asleep at the wheel, leaving you free to operate in the shadows. You trade a momentary scratch to your pride for absolute unhindered maneuverability. There is a unique kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to explain a complex reality to a mind that can only process simple ideas. You draw diagrams, you use analogies, you reduce the concept into its smallest, most fundamental pieces, and they still look back at you with empty eyes before repeating the very same flawed argument they made 20 minutes earlier. This is the heart of the intelligence trap. You assume their failure to understand is the result of your failure to explain. It is not. It is a limitation of their own mental architecture. David Robson's research on cognitive bias points to a disturbing reality. Highly intelligent people are especially vulnerable to one particular mistake: believing that everyone else processes information the way they do. You think in probabilities. You evaluate evidence. You revise your conclusions whenever new information appears. The fool thinks in absolutes. They reach a conclusion first, usually driven by emotion or loyalty to a group, and then reject every piece of evidence that challenges it. Trying to make them appreciate nuance is like trying to install a modern operating system on a typewriter. It cannot be done. The architecture simply does not allow it. So stop trying. Schopenhauer argued for a complete departure from the instinct to educate. In his 38 stratagems for winning an argument, he developed methods specifically for dealing with opponents who are completely resistant to reason. One of his most effective methods is the strategic use of irony. When a fool corners you with a demand for agreement on a ridiculous premise, do not fight the premise. Say this: what you are proposing is so extraordinary, it completely transcends my poor capacity to understand it. I must defer to your judgment. The fool will puff out their chest. They will take it as a concession. They will believe they have dazzled you with their brilliance. But anyone with a fraction of intellect watching the exchange will hear the dripping sarcasm. You have insulted them to their face, and they thanked you for it. You have safely exited the conversation without expending a single calorie of intellectual energy. You must understand the economics of attention. Every hour you spend debating a fool is an hour stolen from your own empire. It is energy diverted from your wealth, your health, your actual goals. Fools are energy vampires. They do not produce. They consume. They drag you into endless circular debates because they have nothing better to do with their time. Your time is expensive. Theirs is worthless. When you engage, you are trading gold for dirt. Cut the transaction. Walk away. Let them believe they won. The lion does not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep, and the architect does not weep when the demolition crew calls his blueprints confusing. We need to address the darkest part of your psychology, the reason you keep engaging with them. It is not just because you want to be right. It is because you feel sorry for them. You think, if I can just make them see the truth, their life will improve. If I can just show them the flaw in their logic, they won't make this terrible mistake. This is the arrogance of empathy. You believe you are the savior of the ignorant. You are playing God with someone else's cognitive limitations. This is a dangerous, bleeding heart philosophy that will pull you straight to the bottom of the ocean. Kruger and Dunning's landmark study in 1999 uncovered one of the cruelest truths in human psychology. The very abilities required to become competent at something are the same abilities required to recognize competence in the first place. As a result, those who are deeply incompetent also lack the self-awareness needed to realize just how incompetent they are. They live inside a fortress built from unearned confidence, completely unable to see their own limitations. You cannot rescue them. They have no desire to be rescued. They are comfortable inside that fortress. It shields them from the frightening complexity of reality. The moment you try to drag them into the harsh light of truth, you stop looking like someone who wants to help. You become an invader, and they will resist you with the same intensity as a wild animal protecting its territory. Think about the people in your own life. The friend who is always broke, refuses to change their spending habits, yet constantly argues about the economy. The toxic family member who creates endless conflict while insisting that everyone else is the problem. How many years have you spent trying to fix them with logic? How many nights of sleep have you sacrificed? They have not changed in the slightest, but you have grown older, more cynical, and more exhausted. Your empathy is feeding their illusion. Schopenhauer was uncompromising in the way he viewed human nature. He believed that character itself is largely unchangeable. People do not transform who they are. They only change the situations around them. If someone is a fool today, they will remain a fool tomorrow. Accepting that truth is painful. It requires a kind of emotional amputation. You have to look at people you might care about, or people you must work with, and accept their terminal limitations. You stop trying to upgrade them, you start managing them. You manage a fool the way you manage heavy machinery. You keep your hands out of the gears, you stay behind the safety lines, you expect it to operate exactly as it was built to operate. When the machine malfunctions, you don't argue with it, you pull the plug. What happens when you finally stop fighting them? What happens when you drop the rope, stop explaining yourself, and simply observe the circus around you without participating in it? You experience a profound, terrifying shift. You realize how much of your identity was wrapped up in being the smartest person in the room. You realize how much you relied on the friction of debating fools to feel alive. When you take that away, you are left with yourself. This is where the true test begins. Most intelligent people surround themselves with lesser minds intentionally. They do it because it is safe. It is easy to look like a genius when you are surrounded by idiots. It is a psychological crutch. But Schopenhauer warned that a man of high intellect who fraternizes with the vulgar will eventually be dragged down to their level. The mind adapts to its environment. If you spend your days arguing about trivialities, your mind will become trivial. You must withdraw, not a physical withdrawal into the woods, a mental withdrawal and emotional quarantine. You must become comfortable with being misunderstood. Fools will misinterpret your distance. They will call you arrogant. They will say you have changed. They will assume your refusal to argue is a sign of weakness. Let them. Their judgment is based on a flawed premise. Why should the judgment of a flawed mind affect the peace of a sharp one? Imagine walking through an asylum. The patients point at you and call you crazy. Do you stop and argue with them? Do you pull out a medical chart to prove that you are the sane one? No, you simply keep moving. You understand that their perception of reality is distorted. The world itself is a much larger asylum, but the principle remains exactly the same. When a fool insults you, it is not truly an insult. It is a misdiagnosis. When they reject your idea, it is not a failure. It is evidence that your idea exists beyond their ability to understand. This level of detachment is not cruelty. It is complete clarity. It is the realization that your energy is limited, and every piece of it wasted on someone determined to remain ignorant is energy taken away from your own potential. For centuries, society has glorified debate. We admire the image of the intellectual warrior standing before an audience, destroying an opponent with perfect logic and flawless arguments. But examine those debates carefully. Almost nothing has ever truly changed. The opponent rarely admits defeat. The audience simply celebrates the side they already supported. It is performance. It is a game designed for approval. The truly dangerous minds are not playing for applause. They are playing for results. If you want to become effective, if you want to become truly impossible to shake, you must leave the performance behind. You must adopt the mindset of an architect moving through a world of children. You do not ask children for permission before you build. You do not explain the load-bearing capacity of the pillars to them. You give them a toy to distract them, and you pour the concrete while they are looking the other way. This is the ultimate application of Schopenhauer's philosophy. You accept the world exactly as it is, dominated by irrationality, driven by emotion, and hostile to truth. You do not complain about it. You do not try to fix it. You exploit it. When you know that people operate on ego, you use their ego to steer them. When you know they are blind to logic, you use their emotions to guide them. When you know they are starved for validation, you feed them just enough to keep them compliant. You become the invisible hand. They think they are making the decisions. They think they are in control, but every choice they make is within the parameters you silently constructed. This is the transition from intelligence to power. Intelligence is knowing you are right. Power is not caring if they know it. Intelligence is winning the argument. Power is winning the objective while they think they won the argument. You clicked on this video because you were exhausted. You were tired of the constant friction, the endless circular conversations, the feeling that you were losing your mind, trying to inject reason into an unreasonable world. You thought the solution was a better argument, a sharper fact, a more persuasive tone. Now you know the truth. The solution is surrender, not surrendering to them, surrendering your need to change them. The moment you let go of the desire to be understood by people who are incapable of understanding the weight lifts, the exhaustion vanishes. You watch them speak, and instead of anger, you feel a calm clinical observation. You see the cognitive biases at play. You see the Dunning-Kruger effect in real time. You see the fragile ego defending itself. It becomes predictable, and what is predictable can be managed. You are no longer a participant in their chaos. You are the observer of it. This is the therapeutic darkness. This is the cold, sharp reality that sets you free. You will never be hurt by a fool again because you will never again give them the authority to judge your reality. Your intellect is no longer a tool for their education. It is a weapon for your own advancement. Keep it sharp, keep it concealed, and use it only when it serves your rise. But understand this. The tactics we have explored, strategic incompetence, the manipulation of ego, and the weaponization of absurdity, are only the outer defenses. These are the tools you use to survive among the masses. But what happens when you move beyond the masses? What happens when you encounter a mind that is not foolish, but predatory? A mind that recognizes your strategy and reflects it back at you. At that level, the rules completely change. The principles that govern that level of psychological conflict are not designed for public exposure. They are too disruptive. They break apart the very foundation of ordinary social interaction. If this has opened your eyes, understand that this is only what I can reveal publicly. There are videos I cannot share with everyone. There are aspects of dark psychology that cannot simply be discussed openly on YouTube without facing censorship or demonetization. The algorithm hides the most powerful information. Those insights exist beyond the join button. If you are still here, you are not like everyone else. Subscribe if you have not already. But if you want access to what remains hidden, click the join button and enter the architect level. You will unlock exclusive videos that explore the deepest layers of the human mind without limits. Most people will not do it, and that is exactly the point.